I'm gonna make a video, even though I have zero, experience with wolves and pack of wolves, but I've noticed a lot of humans are like that. Like, a wolf pack typically has, one wolf in charge, and and there's, other wolves that are, like, well, basically, a lot of humans are like that. They're basically, it's like the one of those Stanford experiments, psychology experiments. That probably wasn't the only one. There's another experiment that involved someone, Milgram's obedience experiment. I couldn't remember if that was affiliated with Stanford or not. But we could, there was this girl named Jeannie from that I learned in a psychology class where she rarely spoke. I'm going to be discussing Americans in this video because America, or it may actually be applicable to a lot of people that aren't Americans too. But Jeannie is this. Her real name isn't Jeannie. Um, um, I suppose that's her name. The others called her, but she rarely spoke. I don't know much about Jeannie personally, because apparently she's actually still alive. So Jeannie's this girl that rarely spoke. She's now very old. I can't remember when she was born, but it's very unusual where you know I have the sense a lot of people are obsessed with controlling something because they don't want to understand. And the reason they don't want to understand is their own choice. Every choice has an effect that occurs. And it's, I suppose, microeconomics borrows this idea a little, calls it opportunity cost. And I suppose that's not a bad way of looking at it, but but every choice has bunch of choices that you could have made, right? Physics sometimes explores this idea. It makes a lot of sense. Every choice you make, in every aspect of your life, it causes you to, it's like if you make a choice to have a certain lifestyle, you're not going to have a different lifestyle, right? So, someone who is secluded from society will perceive certain things. Someone that lives in society as a normal person, for example, would not have those perceptions, would not have arrived at those conclusions. Someone who chooses to live a life like Jeannie, you know, will probably likely attracts people who are very articulate in certain ways in conversing. Someone who does the opposite of Jeannie, will probably, have certain types of people in their life. Perhaps not immediately, perhaps in the future, but their choice will affect the opportunities that comes across. Assuming they don't see Bill Gates, in that case, their opportunities are sealed. But but we're going to make the assumption, benefit of the doubt, that they won't be seeing Bill Gates. They would be able to have those opportunities in the future, right? But of course, people are very sensitive to things like religion and politics and money, right? Religion, politics, money makes a lot. There's controversial topics. People would rather discuss other things. Usually those discussing other things will not provoke certain emotions. I think a lot of concepts I discuss can be applicable in those two subjects, but I have browsed a few great I browsed one great course, so this DVD. I haven't been to a university lecture in a few years, 2019 was the last time. So that's like 6 years. But I've noticed a lot of professors, you know, the main problem was sometimes students are tired doing these lectures, right? You know, it's not the same thing as if they were with friends, in a casual setting. That's actually a far better time to learn these subjects. So let's say you introduce a topic like law of attraction or something from physics. I can't remember the concept word, but something like the butterfly effect. I don't know. Not really the right time. No one's gonna remember any of those topics from professor lecture, right? They might remember it if they read a textbook and they kept the textbook as opposed to returning it at the end of the quarter or semester, right? What am I saying? Oh, I'm saying that you it's not appropriate for me to discuss examples before telling you what the concept name is, which doesn't really isn't really applicable because the concept has many different words. Uh, um, but part of the reason is that choices you make, you know, like people are obsessed with the idea that other people are gonna observe your choice. No, not quite. Um, the choices you make can affect the choices you make in the future, right? Um, assuming that you have a future and you don't see Bill Gates, right? I have to clarify those things because those cases exist. It makes it easy, right? I can't, assume that everyone watching my video will have those opportunities, right? And those assumptions are all often made from a lot of unethical and immoral choices are made throughout history. And I suppose it's hard to argue of what constitutes as human rights abuses, but but the point is a lot of people refuse to acknowledge these things because of the pack effect that I discussed earlier in this video. The university lectures are not going to provide the answer for these things either, because of what I said earlier about like you're not going to learn these concepts unless you have the textbook and you kept it for the next few years, right? And of course, not just keeping it, but reading it, right? They're not going to remember those concepts at graduation just because, again, they were tired during lecture, right? They're not with, their group of friends they care about. Sometimes, other students, commute from their, to save money, only tuition. They're not going to discuss these concepts with a friend, right? Well, relaxing. That doesn't work. That doesn't, no, I've never seen anything like that, right? I've never seen someone do things like that, in that way. And watching it, I mean, there are plenty of people who watch great courses, videos. I mean, old people that haven't been to university for decades, right? But they watch great courses of a course that either they never enrolled in, or a course they haven't enrolled in for many years, and might be in a different college and possibly in a different country too. As you can tell, it's very different, right? And those types of people probably wouldn't be on. Some of them might not be on YouTube for all. Especially not actively looking for quality videos. It doesn't work, right? Excuse me. But I browse Quora a little bit on the New Age stuff, and I will admit, the idea of countries having war with each other is relatively easy to understand. War can be caused by a lot of different reasons, but ultimately, somebody has to make a decision to declare war. Right? It may be caused by something that happened in the past, regardless. But the problem is that people don't care about, right? Because if war were to occur, they don't care about the war itself, but they care about the immediate danger around them. For example, like there's an invasion in the homeland, then obviously the concern is safety. It's an immediate concern, right? They're not obsessed. They're not going to care about the future that way. It reminds me of why when I visit pharmacies, sometimes grocery stores, that have these eyeglasses, right, that are for farsighted. The condition is called farsightedness, which means they can't see things or close to them. Those are very inexpensive, and you can purchase them easily. But the nearsighted glasses cannot be purchased. So if I, for example, have a hard time seeing things from a far distance, I would have to purchase it somewhere else, right? I would have to purchase it I would have to purchase it somewhere with an eye doctor, right? Their clinic. I cannot purchase it pharmacy, for example. Right? I could purchase it online. It is sold online without a prescription. And it makes me wonder why that is. It's simple. People don't care about these type of things. They care about what's in front of them, right? And this is most certainly the case in any war. Lots of people, during war. There's lots of people like that. It makes you wonder if you watch a documentary on war or read a book on war. There's plenty of those nonfiction books. Most people don't, consider that. Lots of these characters. Some of them are fictional, made-up stories that are based on a true story. Lots of them are prone to getting that particular eye disease where they can't see things they're near them, but they can see things far away. You see this similar type of behavior over and over, right? It explains a lot of things. It explains why war consistently continues. It's because of this type of person. Now, I can't stereotype because I can't really describe what this type of person is. I can only say that a lot of them are prone to this eye disease where they can't see things that are close to them, right? So if they wear glasses, it's for reading. It's called reading glasses, right? So it's like, but it makes you look at history classes very differently. With war, you see these things happen, right? You see that during war, especially if the homeland is affected, if completely, and like you have to look at this from all different senses, not just the history of the country you're in, right? Because world history is lots of different countries, lots of different time periods. The only problem is, discussing. The problem is, in a university lecture, the reason why these topics are really discussed in casual settings is, again, a lot of students they're drinking coffee. They're tired, right? They're just taking this class, meet a requirement, to get the grades, and some of them generally understand the subject, right? But oftentimes in the casual settings, they're with someone that doesn't understand the subject, right? That's very frequent, and because of that, there's no way you can really explain anything with the subject in a casual setting. So it doesn't matter. Years could pass. this person would have all this knowledge of the subject if they truly knew it, and this other person would have zero knowledge. It doesn't matter how much conversations you have on this subject. There won't be conversations on that subject. I assure you, I've observed people I know. So that's what I mean. That's what I iterate my point earlier in this video. The choices you make can affect, other choices that other people make. I mean, obviously, but it also most certainly affects the choices you make in the future. I'm like, oh, I don't get my points across articulately. I'm like, that could be corrected because I can add stuff to the description, right? See, that's the thing. Usually a certain type of person, I browse this post on Reddit, is about someone who made a mistake, wasted $500 on a plane trip, or could it be a train ride? I can't tell. To a different state. And it wasn't for a vacation. It wasn't for a hotel visit. It wasn't for tourist sighting. No, they had to stay at some person's house, right? Which I thought would be very risky personally, but this person did this in a much different year, so perhaps I probably don't know that much about her circumstances, other than that this occurred. So this person's probably like 40 years old now or something like that, right? So this happens. So this happened in a different generation, sort of. So compared to my generation. So like this person, there are a lot of, I don't know. I mean, I'm surprised that the person that took her as hostage didn't get arrested. Because that person was dealing with some illicit drug activity before. This is before marijuana was legalized in Washington and Colorado in 2012. So clearly, this person got experience what it's like for a police officer not to do anything about her circumstances. So what's that mean? It means that there's reasons why things occur. And a lot of people don't want to accept those reasons because they've been playing a huge round of Blues Clues, and that's a children's TV show from Nick Jr. It's a phrase I made up where they were just basically stuck with their heads in the clouds, not seeing the world as accurately, from what it really is. Alright, I'm gonna end this video here.